Greetings and salutations, my dear audience. It's Joe St. Egg Benedictus, just coming at you today with a video on writing, researching, preparing a Sunday school curriculum lesson. I figured it might be fun to just go through a few steps that I take to write Sunday school curriculum. I write for what's called the Formations curriculum from Smith & Helwes. I don't see any laying around that I can show you, but I just wanted to walk through some steps of how I do some research and writing and the steps that I take for that. It might be interesting. If not, just go to the next video. But I want to give a shout out to my pal Mike, to all the visionaries and mystics out there. Thank you for joining me. First of all, I write a month full of lessons. So it's 4 to 5 lessons each Sunday has a lesson. The editors assign a scripture and a blurb on what they're looking for, and it goes with a unit theme. So my theme is Peter and discipleship, which will be published in 2024. Anyhow, so they send me that, and the first thing that I do is set up my desk here at quite a desk here, quite a setup at home, because I write all my Sunday school curriculum at home. I don't really have time to do it at church or work, so I really have to devote work at home to do it. And so what I use is the 3rd edition of the New Oxford Annotated Bible, which I keep at home at all times. I use the 4th edition for church, but I don't like to bring that home, and I don't really like to cart it around. I have it open to my first lesson that I'm writing on, which is Matthew 4 and John chapter 1. So the calling of the disciples, Peter specifically. And the first step that I do when I write curriculum is I write all of my verses down. I date them, and then I write the verse down. And then just a blip of the heading on the page, read the text, and just basically free write, or just think of ideas of writing. Things that catch my attention, things that really just stick out. And, you know, when you study the Bible, if you don't have a seminary degree or a Bible training, there's only one question that you need to start with whenever you read the Bible. What catches your attention? That means you have to be paying attention. But if you're paying attention and you're reading the word, when something catches your attention, focus on that. Look into that. You don't have to understand the entire section. Just see what catches your attention. And then if you go back to it later, then you can say, you know, what else catches my attention, or how does this work? Or you can just keep a commentary lying around. I here at home, since I have all my commentaries, I keep a one book commentary. This is the Mercer commentary on the whole Bible. And this basically just gives you snippets, gives you book introductions, but it just basically gives you snippets for each section of the Bible. It's very basic, but when I'm at home, if I'm not at work and I just have something quick to do, it works out. So that's also by Mercer University Press. All right, just a little tip there. So what I do is I just basically write notes and do that for all of the lessons. And since I'm doing Peter, I did some preliminary work, not only by doing this, which is that first step, but I went to the church and I got a few books and brought them home to prepare. One of the things that I got was the Topical Bible, and I printed this page. You see here, where am I? Peter, right there. And then this gives you all of the scripture references for Peter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep that in my folder just as a reference so that I have it if I need it. I mean, I can always Google something, but I want to know, you know, I just want to have that as a reference. And then I don't think I have anything else reference-wise. And then the other thing I did, and I did this morning, was I got out my New Interpreter's Dictionary, which again is very general. It's by Abingdon. It's it's a 5-volume series, and it's very general. But what I did is I read up on Peter. I did that last week. I read up on Peter, and when I read up on Peter, I took notes. Let me see here. I have a sheet. Here it is, where I took notes just on Peter. So I put the page number, the author, New Interpreter's Dictionary. Peter's mentioned 155 times in the New Testament. And when I basically read in the dictionary facts, things, fun things about Peter that might be useful to me. So I always have this as a guide. So I did that. And then the second thing I did is I got it for fishing and fishermen, because I wanted to know a little bit about fishermen. I'm in a Sunday school class that uses the curriculum that I actually write for, and that's fun. And I'm not the teacher, but sometimes when I'm listening to the teacher or co-teachers and people talk about the lessons, they like to know interesting facts that really are off the beaten path. And so one of the things I wanted to include in my curriculum was some facts about fishing and fishermen in the ancient world. So I got my F out. That didn't sound right. I got my F dictionary out, looked up fishermen, and don't know what that is, and did that, researched that. And then what I did was I basically wrote, assuming this is going to be a part in a whole, I wrote, instead of taking notes, as I was reading, I was forming in my mind the writing, and basically I wrote a few pages on fishing and fishermen in my own words. I included references here. So for instance, down here, I included the author and the page number. When I needed to, I also included another author and page number here from a different source that I picked up. So anyhow, the other thing I wanted to, as I'm writing, as I'm thinking about ways to catch readers' attention, and I thought, why did Jesus not call people from his own guild, like carpenters? You know, people grouped in guilds back then, and I'm wondering, why didn't Jesus call carpenters to be his disciples? He knew them, he knew the trade, you know, they thought. Also, why not farmers and shepherds? And I said, he also could have called farmers or shepherds, certainly keeping in theme with the characters surrounding his birth, or those filling his parables. Perhaps Jesus called fishermen out of necessity. By the time he called the disciples, folks in Nazareth already ran him out of town, and he made his way to the shore of Galilee, where these young men were readily available for a change of scenery. So that's that. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take, now that I have two very generic points of research, and I can always research later, is I'm going to take each Sunday or each writing. Where is my writing? I'm missing something. What am I missing? Where is it? Oh, here it is. Here we go. So this is what I'm going to be researching. I have to do research. On this Sunday, there are two texts, John 1 and Matthew 4. I'm going to focus on Matthew 4 for a while and then hit up John 1 later. But these are my, again, generic notes. But what I do is I have this commentary called Feasting on the Gospels, which Feasting on the Word series came out a few years ago, and they came out with specific feasting on the Gospels, feasting on the Psalms, this, that, and the other. And it's a as you can see, multi-volume commentary by Westminster John Knox Press. And what they do, it's a great commentary. You get a section, and then you get four different perspectives. So a theological perspective that runs here, okay, pastoral perspective, exegetical and homiletical, and then you get different authors. So what I'm going to do, I have my little bookmark here for Matthew 4:18, is I'll read each section, and then continuing on my notes from my Bible, I'll basically continue writing and then add some more sheets. Now, one of the things I thought of here is when I opened this morning, I see that I wrote in here for previous sermon studies or Bible studies, but I underline this: Jesus is presented as having an authority that is difficult to withstand. And what that reminded me of in my little writing here on fishermen is how Peter and his friends followed Jesus. And I talk about somewhere about Jesus' authority. So let me see here. Shepherds, farmers, carpenters. I talk about the economic life of fishermen. Arriving on the heels of numerous miracles, a growing reputation and authoritative teaching, Jesus and his call would have appealed to these young men and some women who longed for a change of pace, freedom from Rome's tyranny, and joining a movement that fostered a messianic hope. All that they learned from synagogue, the law, and the prophets seemed to focus on this enigmatic figure. When he called Peter and his friends to become fishers of people, how could they refuse? And then what I might write here, since I have this little thing here, it says, He's presented as having an authority that is difficult to withstand. So what I may do is I'll take that and I'll grab probably a red pencil here, or most likely a pen, because I don't care, this is all scrap. And what I might do is figure out a place. Joining Movement fostered when he called Peter and his friends to become fishers of people, how can they refuse? Especially one. Let me see here. Go back here. Authority that is especially one whose authority is difficult to withstand. Okay, so I have my quote there, especially one whose authority is difficult to withstand. So I add that in for later. I don't have to use it, it's just there. And that's going to be Feasting on the Gospels by, the author is, page 62. The author is Bedford, page 62. So that's Bedford, Feasting, page 62. Now, it doesn't mean I have to use it, but it's in there, and I lock it in. And when I write this on, on my computer for reals, I'm going to probably change it up anyway, because I'll either be in a different mood or I'll be in a different tone. I also have some illustrations that I want to include, so that's how it works. So basically, if you're doing an intense Bible study, that's how I recommend you do it. Simply get something you can draw, write, map out. I love loose leaf paper because I can have multiple pages. Like here, I got an illustration I thought of. There's so much happening in a. The reason why I wrote that is because on this first day, I have two texts, and one of the things that the editor wanted me to do was to explain why each call story is slightly different than the other. So one of my ideas, because the editor asked and requested that I do that in that first unit of that first lesson, is I wanted to come up with a very approachable, non-controversial way of saying, each scene is different. But what I did is I thought of what's happening in the scene, and I remembered working on the set of a movie called Blood and Wine with Jennifer Lopez and Jack Nicholson. I'm not an actor. I just went with friends. They had a call for extras. They were filming down in Miami. And so me and a few friends jumped in a car, went down, and about 40 other extras had to do a scene where Jennifer Lopez was walking down the street and a car pulls up. She has a conversation with whoever was in the car. It wasn't Jack Nicholson. I know that for a fact because that's who I was looking for. And then the car drove away. And all we had to do was on cue when they said whatever it is, cut, whatever it is, whenever they gave the cue, action, I had to walk across the street, stood there waiting. They had to get the set, the lighting right. They had to feed us lunch. They finally got the right lighting. They threw us in a position. They had trained us already what to do. I mean, walking across the street is easy. They said, cut. We did it. We did about, I would say about 6 to 10 takes. So go back to the street, cut, walk across the street, go back. And I'm talking to this girl, I don't know her from Adam, and 40 extras sprawled throughout a Miami street, made up the scene, and the scene got cut from the movie. So we spent about 6 hours working on the scene that eventually got cut. So I want to explain that as an illustration of thinking through how each gospel writer gives you a different feel or a different perspective, but there's a lot left on the cutting floor. There's a lot of moving parts, and I'm going to use my Blood and Wine example to say, for 6 hours of complicated orchestration and choreography and lighting and acting and various ways of doing takes where the actors or actresses are doing things differently, it made all of I would say a 3-minute scene that eventually got left in the cutting room floor. So I think that's a good illustration. I wanted to get that down, and I think that'll come in handy, especially in my first lesson, which launches into a month of Sunday lessons on on Peter. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. It just gives you a little insight of how people think about when they're researching, writing, and preparing. In my case, Sunday school curriculum, it could be a sermon. My sermon prep is not as complicated as all this. There's a lot of moving parts, but my sermon prep is very similar, where I just start with the Bible, start with prayer, give it a day of just ruminating, try to think of illustrations or anecdotes to go with the sermon, and then I work with commentaries, take notes, and then write my sermon at the end of the week. So my sermon is a microcosm of all of this, which will be 5 weeks or units that cover 5 weeks, but it'll take me about, I want to say, a good 3 months of researching and writing to do the 5 weeks. It takes a lot of work to write it, to get it right, to proofread it, to get things together. And then I have to do it in between my regular job, which is to pastor a church. I'll go on a retreat in January to do a lot of writing. You can catch my retreat videos when I've done that before. And I also did a video when I was on my retreat of my desk, setting up my desk for writing the curriculum. So I'll put the link to that at the end of the film. Nevertheless, if you're a Christ follower, I encourage you to study the Word, how you feel comfortable, but hopefully I give you some tips to go by, and definitely hope to see you again soon.